If you've spent a decent amount of time on the internet, whether you know it or not, chances are you've had some sort of exposure to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. It's a massively popular series for a reason. Everything about it is just so damn quotable and memeable, which massively contributes to its constant spread across every corner of the internet. The amount of times I've seen somebody not know what JoJo is or show no interest in it, but I've seen the Kakyoin and cherry licking scene is staggering. The show has a very special appeal, unlike any other. Ask any JoJo fan, and there's a good chance they'll cite the insane characters as a reason they love the show. Probably the best example being Dio Brando. Dio, along with Jotaro, are the poster boys of the series, that people who aren't even JoJo fans will know. I have seen, however, that when some people finally cave and decide to watch the show, they're a bit disappointed by Dio. They see him as just a shallow character who's evil for the sake of being evil. And I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like Dio is some kind of insanely well-written character, because he isn't. He does have a character, backstory, and motivation, albeit somewhat simple. As a brief recap of these, Dio was born into an incredibly poor family, with his father Dio Brando being the human incarnation of the gum under school desks. Dio was abusive to both Dio and his unnamed wife. Dio's mother was one of the few people in the world who Dio ever respected, as she went out of her way to care for Dio in the dire circumstances they were in. And while it is never really specified how, Dio had killed her, thus sparking Dio's hatred for the world and setting him down the path to become the person we know now. Dio simply wanted to get revenge on the world and see it burn after he had seen how cruel can be to some, yet so wonderful and forgiving to those born into a position of power. Everyone looked down upon him simply because he was poor and was dealt a horrible hand in life, not even taking a moment to look at him for the incredibly smart person that he was. This caused him to harbor an incredible hatred for the rich and powerful, which we have seen time and time again with the Joestars being the very incarnate of all that he hates. Therefore, he sets out to destroy them from the inside. It's a pretty simple setup and motivation, all things considered, especially when compared to other villains with much more complex motivations and backstories, such as Steel Baron's Funny Valentine. Yet, in spite of that, Dio remains the most popular and talked about character in the entire series. So if it's not a complex and character backstory and motivation, then, well, what is it? Well, in a weird way, that lack of complexity is the answer. It's his lack of depth and character that makes him so incredibly entertaining to watch. This is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure we're talking about here. A series with vampires, zombies, ghosts, turtles with apartments in them, invisible zombie alligators, sentient plankton, Jesus Christ, magical fruit, and dinosaurs for God's sake. For somebody to get into JoJo, they need to learn the important lesson to just stop asking questions and accept things for how they are. Dio is the incarnate of that idea. The lack of any incredibly interesting characteristics or backstory allows for an interesting setup and climax. You don't have to think about why he's doing what he does. He's Dio. He does it because he's evil and wants to take over the world. It allows you to simply turn your brain off and enjoy the action for what it is, because sometimes you don't want to have your morality challenged or to think critically about what's going on. Sometimes you want to just sit back, relax, and enjoy it for what it is. A bunch of buff dudes punching each other. This may be a somewhat weird comparison to make here, but I'd like to use horror games as a bit of an example here. The whole horror genre has been criticized a lot for just being a bunch of cheap jump scares for the most part, with there hardly being any games innovating on the genre nowadays. This is a pretty valid criticism that I agree with, but I also think that those games that are just a bunch of cheap jump scares still have a place in the world of video games. As good as an amazing horror game is that creates true fear that sticks with you for a long time is, sometimes you don't want to play something like that. Sometimes you just want to turn your brain off and enjoy some mindless scares to pass the time. The media you consume doesn't always have to be complex and innovative. Video games that are just simple ways to entertain you for a bit are perfectly valid. It is the same way that I think of Dio. He is nothing new or innovative, rather just an entertaining character you can watch and enjoy to pass the time without thinking about things too much. The crazy things Dio does couldn't be done by any other character, because they wouldn't make sense for them to do. But Dio can do them because, why the hell not? He's Dio, and he does what he wants. Just channel your inner monkey brain, and don't think about it. Is he a well-developed character with complex motivation? No. Does he recite interesting dialogue that causes the audience to think if the protagonist is really doing the right thing? No. Is he entertaining? Yes, absolutely.